We had never traveled outside of Texas. It was pretty much an adventure for the whole family. And once we were there, my parents didn't speak English. My mom did, and my dad some. And we worked in the fields, and most of the people that we met were, good, friendly people. When we went to town and we did our shopping and things like that, the people there, I think, were used to seeing migrant workers in town. So I don't feel like we were discriminated, but maybe, and I don't think we were treated badly either. We were just sort of, let's see, what's the word?
Looked over? No?
No.
Valued?
There were still some people that were trying to help the families get educated, break the cycle of working in the fields, which we did. It was just our family who went. None of us continued that after. Once we became adults, when we lived in the valley, because we'd work up there in the summer, we'd leave in May and come back in October, so we would miss about the first 6 weeks of school. And then we had to make up all that time.
Did they have a problem with that, or were there the school?
No, they had what they called extended day back then. So you would stay later after school to make up the work.
Okay.
I didn't have any problems with that. Some people did. But when we were kids here growing up, we couldn't speak Spanish at school because we were told you can speak Spanish at home, but not at school because you were in the United States and you speak English. And the elementary school that I went to, where I was told that, is now a bilingual academy or something like that. So now they're teaching kids Spanish and English, in the two languages. So it's kind of ironic that now it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in one generation, basically, we've advanced to that. And I think the value of speaking two languages now is more recognized than before.
Back then.
It was just, speak English.
And how does that make you feel?
I don't think that it took anything away from us. It just forced us to learn English. But in the long run, I think it affected how we raised you all because we focused on English.
Mm-hmm.
And we only speak Spanish with, a few people who are Spanish speakers, like my mom, my dad, older relatives, some of the community members, but our primary language now is English. When I was growing up, my first language was Spanish.
So for you, that flipping the better half of your life, what is that? Do you see yourself any different?
What was your question?
Because you said that your primary language first was Spanish, but now do you speak English more than you speak Spanish?
Yes. And how does that make you feel?
Any different?
I don't feel shortchanged. I have the freedom to speak whatever language I want. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. So if I meet people who speak Spanish only for whatever reason or prefer to speak Spanish even though they speak English, I can speak Spanish to them. If they prefer to speak English, then that's also possible. I think what I do regret is not learning more languages. I think we should all learn more languages and not just concentrate on English and Spanish. Because the world is getting basically smaller, and I think it's more beneficial to speak more languages than to limit yourself to only your native language.
Because when I was in Ireland, there was a lot of languages. And then coming back here, reverse culture shock.
Mm-hmm.
So not here. German, French, Welsh,
So even here,
Gaelic.
you have the Filipino population, you have some of the Chinese, and they speak a different language, and it would be good to be able to, speak to them in their language.
So certain research articles, that I read that some Latinas or Latinos don't really prefer the hyphenated or identification of like, I'm blank American, I'm just a Latino, or I'm Hispanic. Do you identify as like a Mexican American, or?
I think that's a label.
Okay.
And that's been created.
Yeah.
To identify populations. It doesn't mean that that's, I think everybody, you have basically, again, freedom of choice of how you want to identify yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make it right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just your own preference. In the, I guess, 70s, maybe.
There was a lot of,
a teenager. There was a Chicano movement, where, there was discrimination and people wanted to become united and identify themselves. And so there was the word Chicano. Then somehow we transitioned into Hispanic, So I've never said, well, I'm Mexican American,
Yeah.
I usually say, I'm Hispanic.
Did you grow up seeing like the civil rights movement on TV?
Yes, but I think I was younger.
Did you ever hear about the walkout in Edcal, Chelsea?
No.
So, remember, because you read my
What year
paper?
was that?
I believe 1968. So you were...
I was 7 years old.
Yeah. Did you always know that you wanted to stay in the valley? Like,
no, actually, I was going to move out.
You were going to move out?
Mm-hmm.
When you got your education and all that, or?
Once I graduated from college, and then when your dad got mad, and I started working at college at the TSTC.
What year did you start at TSTC again? Or
1987. So I had a good job. I had a good salary. I was considered professional staff, and I was helping people. I had a rewarding job where I was helping others get educated and find jobs and improve their livelihood, the lives of their own immediate family and the future of their kids. We also, once we got married and started having children, we thought it was important for you all to grow close to a set of grandparents. And at that time, my parents lived here, and then my grandpa
were in New Mexico.
They were moving to different places. So we decided to stay here and raise a family. So family was a big factor for deciding to stay in this area.
So do you think speaking Spanish, having closer ties to, your family or just having a big family helped your decision to want to raise a family here? Right, just to...
I don't think speaking Spanish was a decision, was a
factor
in deciding to stay
no,
here.
Yeah, okay. For you. Yeah.
The language was not a reason.
But I mean, were you, like, proud to come from the valley? Like, to have this, feeling of culture, and if that makes sense? Because what I'm getting at is that, like people that I've grown up with, or, Abigail's friends, or, I speak generally, but, like, they want to leave and get it. I don't want to be here anymore. But it's also, I'm wondering if there's a correlation between, well, if you don't speak Spanish, or if you don't have some kind of connection or like cultural ties, or feel any connection to your heritage, then I feel like you're more likely to leave than the place you grew up rather than those who've stayed.
Mm.
And I mean, there are other factors involved as far as education, family, or just different circumstances. I'm wondering if that could also be just a small factor.
I think it's all opportunity. It's not having anything to do with language, because there's Hispanics all over the world and all over the state of Texas and even the country. So you're going to have pockets of of communities that are, you know, where you can relate to people who have the same background. But the generation now, and even back then, there was a lot of people who went to school with me that moved away.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not, I think, it's not anything new. When people leave the valley and they have and see other opportunities and they want to stay somewhere else, they do because they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not because, sometimes, and people, you'll hear them say, well, there's nothing to do here and things like that. Well, yeah, there's not as much of the arts maybe and, things like that, but there's still other things to do. And I think if they leave, it's because they have an opportunity for higher salaries and for other opportunities, more flexibility.
And one thing I appreciate that y'all never, we did travel, we were allowed to go to DC or go to California growing up to reach other opportunities rather than, some, they want their kids to stay close to home. And what do you think about that?
Would we prefer to have y'all close? Oh, yeah, of course. I'd love to be able to have y'all close by and see you more often. But the reality is that that's not the way it is now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think technology helps to keep in touch with y'all, to see you face to face on FaceTime,
Mm-hmm.
versus, we didn't have that opportunity, even if you were just 30 miles away in college, and calling, you used to have to pay long distance to call, so that was more expensive, and, we didn't have the money to just call and visit all the time just because.
Mm-hmm.
But now with technology, you can keep in touch with family, whether they're 2 miles away or, 300 or 3,000 miles away.
Mm-hmm. So there's this quote by Gloria. It's about her growing up and speaking. This is the part. Okay. So if you really want to hurt me, talk badly about my language. Ethnic identity is twin skin to linguistic identity. I am my language. Until I can take pride in my language, I cannot take pride in myself. Until I can accept the legitimate Chicano, Texas Spanish, Tex-Mex, and all the other languages I speak, I cannot accept the legitimacy of myself. Until I am free to write bilingually and switch codes without having always to translate, while I still have to speak English or Spanish when I would rather speak Spanglish, and as long as I have to accommodate the English speakers rather than having them accommodate me, my tongue will be illegitimate. I will no longer be made to feel ashamed of existing. I will have my voice, Indian, Spanish, white. I will have my serpent's tongue, my woman's voice, my poet's voice. I will overcome the tradition of silence. So the part about ethnic identity is twin skin to her linguistic identity, that she takes pride in her language. What do you think about that? And can you relate to a certain extent?
I think I take pride in the 2 languages.
In 2 languages?
Mm-hmm. Because I still have a connection to my origin, my
how you grew up,
my culture, my parents and their generation, and at the same time we benefit benefited from the opportunity
Of speaking English.
getting an education, learning English, speaking English, and having the freedom to speak both. Maybe when we were younger, well, not maybe, when we were younger, is when there was more of a limitation for us here. I mean, you still see on different programs and on the news where people say, well, different business owners may say speak English here because, you're in the United States and they don't want someone to speak Spanish. But if that's the case, I mean, you've got people speaking all sorts of languages from all over the world. So are you going to limit them too?
Mm-hmm.
I think as a nation, we need to accept the diversity and learn to live peacefully with everyone. And if it means improving our communication, then that's something that sometimes we need to think about, well, should I learn a different language so I can understand other people who are coming into the country?
Mm-hmm.
So I can communicate with others.
Mm-hmm.
And not just say, well, you know what, I want them to learn English. Well, what's wrong with us learning a different language too?
What do you think about code switching?
Explain that.
In linguistics, code switching or language alternation occurs when a speaker alternates between two or more languages or language varieties. So, meaning it's when you alternate and like Spanglish,
Mm-hmm.
and even some of like the slang you use, or even like the mannerisms and or how you talk, because you're part of two different communities, like English speaking but also Spanish speaking. What was that like growing up, learning English at the same time but also still speaking Spanish?
I think even within the people that I work with and people that I socialize with, it's something that is not favored, especially if you use it in the same sentence where you start speaking English and finish it in Spanish. If you're alternating English and Spanish, but within different conversations, it's better than if you're intermingling them in the same, let's say, sentence, and
So one sentence in English, one sentence in Spanish versus Spanish and English sentence.
right.
Okay. So you, not saying you prefer, but like, is it generally preferred that you finish the thought in one language, and then if you want to speak or just go in and out,
Right.
that's preferred bet more over the other?
I think so. I had one person who we interviewed for a job, and she was speaking Spanish and English within the same sentences and phrases,
Mm-hmm.
and that seemed very awkward, and unfortunately, it probably impacts her a lot if she is interviewing that way with other people, because it makes her seem less educated, to a certain degree.
Because it's improper.
Like speaking slang. Spanglish is not a real
language.
Even though our Spanish is not Castilian perfect Spanish, but it's
border Spanish. It's our own linguistic. And you never did that, like growing up, have Spanish but also English and get them when you were learning? Do you know what I mean? Like when someone learns another language, like you have vocabulary of like one language, but you're thinking in English.
I think it's more difficult now to try and have conversations in Spanish with people who are only Spanish speakers because the lack of practice. So you tend to use an English word that you don't know how to translate,
Mm-hmm.
in that Spanish conversation, in that conversation that is mostly Spanish.
Mm-hmm. But did you answer for yourself? You never experienced that code switching? Maybe, but just
I'm sure I did,
yeah.
but I don't remember.
Was it hard learning English from school?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't remember having difficulty.
Because you were younger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was easier for your brain was still
We
developing.
just learned it.
Yeah.
I don't remember how. We just did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think kids should be taught more because they learn faster. And not just the two languages, but more. That's probably one of those things that I wish we would have focused on more, with expanding the knowledge of more languages.
That quote, I'm trying to relate that to more second gen. Because one of Gloria's theories...
She's older than me. How old is she? How old would she be now?
She was born in 1942.
So she's a lot older than me.
Yes.
She's about almost 20 years older than me.
Yes.
So it's a totally different experience.
Oh, yeah. No, I understand that. It's just the certain theories or whatever she quotes, I find it relatable for first or second and third gens. All right, one more question. What do you think about growing up in the Valley? The culture, what do you think about the Valley as a place to live?
Good place to live. Nice family.
And near the border. Is that?
I don't think it's necessarily because it's near the border. I think it's just because it's just in general what it is. It's still small enough, but not too small, where you still have access to things like medical services, education, colleges and universities.
Yeah.
It may not be the most luxurious place, but it's still a good foundation, for us, for family, for values, for growing up. I mean, you can have some of those things no matter where you live, but I think...
What makes the Valley different from other places?
The blending of cultures.
And do you feel it?
Do I feel it?
The blending of cultures, that you're immersed in it, that you're proud to be from South Texas.
I don't think that, I've never really thought of, I'm proud to be from the Valley. I am from the Valley. It's just a fact. But I value where I come from. I don't think I'll ever forget where I come from. And pretend I'm something I'm not. I don't remember thinking, wow, I'm proud to be from this area. I just am. It's just something that I am.